Yeah, and these are things I typed before class, so you guys got really close on those. To improve thinking, by thinking, about thinking. If that's confusing to you, ignore it. If it helps you, if the repetition helps you, use it. If it doesn't help you, forget it. Thinking by thinking about. Yeah, the second part is exactly what Marquise and probably a couple others wrote. To purposefully examine our thinking with the goal of improving it, and that last part is what Broader said it, but yeah, questions are the hallmark of critical thinking. Some of those, any of those things would get you a long way. So let's work on Phelps a little bit more, because he gives a couple of really great examples, I think. He chooses a couple of things as examples for critical thinking. So, and someone wrote this. I read someone reading through the answers. Driving requires the ability to answer a series of questions. Now, whether we so the way that that a critical thinker would look at driving is different than probably how you look at driving. I'm guessing most of you drive. So if you do drive, you may not be aware that you have to answer a series of questions in order to make this happen. So what kinds of questions do you have to be able to answer if you drive a car? Spins, right? Okay. Right. If you don't know where you're going, it really won't matter much. I guess, why? Do you have a purpose for driving? What's your purpose for driving? That's a purpose question. What other basic questions are you going to have to
know how to start the car. You got to know how to start the car.
You got to know how to start it. So we assume that most people know how to start a car, but even starting a car, like that's something that's changing quite a bit. I'm pretty sure my 4-year-old can. I know he can turn the key back and take the key out. I don't know if he can. If he can get the key in and start the car, I don't know. Hopefully, I won't find out. But he understands the concept of starting a car. Like that's a question you probably answer pretty early in life. But if you're from a culture that either doesn't have cars or you don't drive, handing someone a key and saying drive this car, I'm not sure they know exactly what to do. So you got to be able to answer that question. How do I start the car? And in fact, in 10 years, there won't be keys. So the answer to this question will be different. In fact, now there's some cars we don't use. Good, that's one. What else? How to stop the car. I hope you know how to stop. You can answer that question. Otherwise, it's going to get ugly pretty quick. You know how to stop this car. Do you remember when you started driving? The first time you braked on the car, what happened? Yeah, you probably broke your parent. Yeah. So whoever was with you probably went to the dashboard. So you got to learn that. You know that conceptually, when you start driving, you know that this pedal stops the car. In practice, there's a different question. How do I stop the car? I push this pedal. Okay. What question comes from after you started driving? Is there a better question that comes with how to stop this car? Right. How much pressure do I put on this brake pedal? It's a different question. As you drive now, you have other questions about how do I stop it. Let's say that. We'll get to advanced questions about driving in a minute. All right. Any other basic questions you can identify that you need to be able to answer? Drop the car.
How to steer.
Yeah. How do I make this thing go left and right? One important one is what do all these signs mean? If you don't know what a traffic light does, that's trouble. Obviously, so there's a lot of basic stuff. But we want to start there. Again, we want to explain our concepts. Clarity. We want to be clear what we're talking about. If you just tell someone how to drive, we make all kinds of assumptions that people know what we're talking about when we say brake pedal pressure. Now, sort of fast forward to however old you are now, do you ask what kinds of questions are important to you regarding cars and driving now?
How much gas you have?
Yeah. So, how much gas do I have, and especially how much will gas cost, and gas mileage, and those kind of things are probably pretty important to you. At this point, they may have been less important to you a couple of years ago, I don't know. I guess all of you aged in when gas was pretty high. But I'm old enough. I remember 88-cent gas. Yeah. What else do you think about?
Laws.
Yeah, traffic laws maybe. You probably, again, conceptually, you knew that 55 on Joe average Kentucky roads is probably going to be the speed limit. However, you probably developed some more advanced questions about the speed limit as you've driven more. Like?
Could you go over speed limit?
Good. Tell me your first name.
Dimitri.
Demetrius? Dimitri. That's absolutely the question. And we're going to get to that in Freakonomics. Why will everyone then drive 60 or 61? If the speed limit's 55, why does everyone drive 60?
Can't you go 10 over?
Okay, good. So, one, that would be, yeah, that would be a conventional, we'll get to conventional wisdom too in Freakonomics, but can you drive 10 over? What's the answer to that question? That's another advanced question. Can I drive 10 miles over the speed limit? And your answer to that would be, depends. Yeah, and that's often the answer. Right. Can I drive 45 and a 35 in certain parts of the city and feel like I'm not going to get a ticket? No. Can I drive 75 on the interstate when it's 65 and feel relatively safe in certain parts of Kentucky? Yeah. It just depends. Can you drive 10 over the speed limit in a school zone? No. Probably can't. Not risk ticket or maybe something worse. That's a fairly nuanced question. The answer to that question depends. A question, I'll explain my concept a little bit. When gas got extra expensive, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this concept, but hypermiling. This was a dictionary's word of the year a couple of years ago. Do you know what this is? This is driving in such a way that it maximizes your gas efficiency. For example, and I don't know how many of you have been educated in the ways of Scottsville Road yet at Bowling Green. For example, when most people, they're driving on a road where there's lots and lots of traffic lights, and you see in the distance that it's green, do you speed up or slow down?
Speed up.
Speed up. Why? You're trying to make that light. What happens to your gas efficiency when you speed up?
Go down very quickly.
It gets worse. Where in reality, I've driven enough on Scottsville Road to know I'm not going to make that light. It's far enough away. So what I'll do is coast. So I know it's going to catch me anyway. So let off your gas, coast into that light I know it's going to turn. So I coast totally into a red light without using any gas. For it might be a long distance. Down hills on the interstate. Take your cruise off. Don't touch the gas. You might slow down a mile or two an hour, but you're going to gain a lot of gas efficiency doing that. Hypermiling, it's a conceptual thing of maximizing gas mileage. Yeah, so I think a lot, and now as a parent of two little kids, when I think about cars, I think mainly about efficiency, and I think mainly about safety. Those are the two things that I certainly didn't think about much when I was 16 or 18. So, and you can take that on, to 25 when you're 35 or 60. Those questions probably change. Those questions evolve. So, a big part of critical thinking is, as you improve this, there's also an evolutionary part. Remember, yes, the genetics, environment, experience. As you get older, your environment does shift some, but really what changes is your set of experiences. You become a very experienced driver. You start asking different kinds of questions the more you drive. That's true for education. That's true in your relationships. It's true in a lot of things. You will evolve as a thinker as you practice your